All right, it's 7 o'clock. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, as far as roll call, Councilman Bueller is absent tonight. Everybody else is present. Old business approval of minutes. The regular meeting minutes of April 15, 2021 were provided for review. I need a motion to approve the regular meeting minutes of April 15, 2021 as presented.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Call roll.
Mr. Dixon?
Present.
Mr. Brungart?
Abstain.
Mr. Stednicka?
Yes.
Mr. Trinkle?
Yes.
Mr. Kirby?
Yes.
Mr. Major?
Yes.
Mr. Garvey?
Yes.
Motion passed. Audience participation. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to address the council on an item that is not on the agenda? Please come forward and state your name and address. We know who you are, Jeanette, but just for the record.
Just for the record. Well, good evening, council members. My name is Jeanette Labby Haldeman. I live on 820 4H Road, and I am here today to speak on item number 6, one of my favorite items for the council to consider. As you know, I have some real concerns about I'm sorry.
When we talk about it, we'll call you back up.
Oh, do you want to do it then?
Yeah, I mean,
Outstanding.
I thought you had something that wasn't on the agenda.
Oh, I'm
So
sorry.
it's on the agenda. When-
Absolutely on the agenda.
Yeah, when we get there, we'll
We
definitely
can
have you
chat.
come up.
Outstanding.
Sorry about that. All right, items for the council consideration. Community Library Board appointments. There are 3 positions on the library board whose terms expire on April 30th, 2021. The positions were advertised and 3 applications were received. The library board met on April 27th to interview the applicants and voted unanimously to recommend appointments to the board. I need a motion to appoint Karen Averill, Ernest Young, and Wendy Vodrick to the Lansing Community Library Advisory Board for a 4-year term expiring on April 30th, 2025.
So moved. Second.
Got a motion and a second? Call the roll.
Mr. Dixon?
Yes.
Mr. Brungart?
Yes.
Mr. Stednicka?
Yes.
Mr. Trinkle?
Yes.
Mr. Kirby?
Yes.
Mr. Major?
Yes.
Mr. Garvey?
Yes.
And thank you for applying, and I hope I didn't butcher anybody's name with that one. Next item on the agenda is the countywide transportation study. Mr. Greg Katz with the Leavenworth County Port Authority will give a presentation on the countywide transportation study and is here to request assistance in funding the study. It's all yours.
Thank you, Mayor, City Councilman. With me tonight is Mr. Dan Gutshaw, who is your representative on the Leavenworth County Port Authority, and I will give him an opportunity to comment too after I'm done with my presentation, and possibly Mike Spickemeyer might want to make a few comments too. So I'll go through this study real quick, my PowerPoint. Starting off, I will apologize for the cheesy template that I used for PowerPoint. As you can see, it's my free PowerPoint. They gave me no budget, so I had to steal it off the internet. So these are cars out in California, and I don't know where Watt Avenue is, but it's as close as I could come. So I'm here to talk to you today about the Leavenworth County Regional Transportation Study that we're trying to get completed for the county. There we go. Go through some real quick history. Leavenworth County has had some issues with connectivity to major interstates, i.e. I-70, I-29, I-435. The northwest part of the metropolitan area has really been challenged in the development. If you look at the other corners of the metropolitan area, you look at the northeast, the Liberty area, the development that's taken place there, southeast, Lee Summit area, southwest, the Olathe area. The northwest part has not seen that development that the other 3 areas of Kansas City have. And part of this has been because we've failed to have a regional plan that has been adopted by MARC, Mid-America Regional Council, and KDOT, Kansas Department of Transportation. So the goal is to get this plan in place to hopefully be able to secure some funding from federal and state sources. So there has been a lot of interest in this in the previous years. KDOT has been very interested in it. MARC has been. Secretary Lorenz actually was up at a chamber meeting about 2 years ago, and what she said is, you guys need a plan. You know, we'd like to help you, but we don't know what to do. We don't know what you want. And we don't want to come in and be the referee between Leavenworth, between Lansing, between Basehor, between Tonganoxie, and between the county. You know, if you give us a list of what you want, then we can start picking them off. But we don't want to pick. So she was politicking for that back 2 years ago. There's been others that have been looking for a plan longer than that. There we go. I want to go through some of the previous studies. There's been a lot of studies done. This goes back almost 21 years. The older the study, the less prevalent that it is, because obviously in 21 years a lot of things have changed. But there's been a major corridor study that looked at 2440, East Lawrence Bypass, Leavenworth Johnson County Connector, K7 freeway upgrades. 2006, K7 corridor management. This was actually broken into 3 different phases. Segment 1 was down in the Olathe area. Segment 2 was more in the Bonner Springs area. Segment 3 was in the Leavenworth County, Wyandotte County area. Didn't get a lot of interest because the Johnson County poll was so strong that a lot of the interest went for Segment 1 and Segment 2. What they did look at, though, is they looked at a 4-lane with an auxiliary lane freeway style with bridges and flyovers at Dempsey, and then possible interchanges at Parallel, Leavenworth Road, Donahue, Hollingsworth, Fairmont, and McIntyre. And then it also looked at some intersection improvements at Gilman Road and East Mary. 2007 was the 2440 corridor management. This looked at Honey Creek Road, which is just west of Tonganoxie, to K7. And then it also looked at a north-south new road that would be west of Basehor, east of Tonganoxie, kind of from the Dempsey Road area, south to Leavenworth County line. 2008, T-Link and KDOT consultation looked at K92 from Leavenworth to KCI, a US 73 bypass, a little bit at K5, again 2440 from Perry to Tongi, and then looked at the Centennial Bridge. 2013 was a 5-county study, I-70, Topeka to Kansas City, 2440, K7, kind of the same stuff again. More recently, 2016 was K92 Centennial Bridge up off Metropolitan. This was looked at a toll facility, but due to the opposition from the city of Leavenworth and from Fort Leavenworth, the toll facility part of it was eliminated. The purpose obviously was to improve an old bridge, increase the capacity on Metropolitan and 4th Street, and the entrance to Fort Leavenworth. Part of that planning included a roundabout at 92 and 45 Spur, just across the bridge. And some of you may have noticed that starting Monday, MoDOT actually started that project. And there will be a roundabout installed there at 45 Spur and 92. There'll be what they call a slip lane road, that if you're headed east on 92 and want to go to 45 Spur, you won't actually go through the roundabout. It's just like a dedicated lane for it. That work is scheduled to be completed around the 1st of December of this year. It's spread out into about 6 different phases in order to maintain traffic on 92 Highway. In February of this year, the Centennial Bridge was moved from the advanced preliminary engineering study to a preliminary engineering phase, and this meant it moved from an illustrative list to a constraint portion. What's that mean? Basically, KDOT took some of the money that they had allocated for K7 and I-70. All that was scheduled in about 7 to 8 different phases. They took some of the money that was programmed for that, they redirected it for the design work on Centennial Bridge. That design work is estimated to be in the $5 million range. That project right now, I believe the budget's somewhere around $120 million to put the bridge in. So the design work hopefully will start here this year. I'm sure it'll probably take a good 18 months to 24 months to get the design completed with all the environmental work and everything that'll have to happen. And again, hopefully once that design work is done, if some of the money comes flowing down from Washington as they promised, maybe some of that money can be directed for that project if it's ready to go. Some of you might remember the Patriot Highway. This was a project that was proposed by John Bradford through the Maris Consulting Group, and it basically looked at a new north-south intelligent highway that was going to go east of Linwood, west of Baser, go across the Kansas River, come up north, and then turn south, or turn east, go south of Lansing, north of Baser, and again across the Missouri River, and tie in somewhere in the 152 range. You'll notice the price tag of $4 billion. That's not a typo. I don't know if any of you saw a couple weeks ago that I believe Lenexa or Shawnee was doing a test strip of Intelligent Highway where they put in slabs of concrete and supposedly they'll be able to charge electric cars, have IT capabilities, and a lot of other neat stuff and room for future expansion. The project price tag was probably about, I think it was about 8 to 10 times what normal pavement would cost. Hence the $4 billion for this project. This project kind of fell off the radar due to some of the public opposition of taking people's land, and I think funding probably was the final nail that killed the project. More recently has been the Eastern Gateway project. I'm sure you guys have heard about this through the county. In spring of 2020, Leavenworth County contracted with Trans Systems to look at a conceptual study. In September, they received that conceptual study, basically got a price tag of about $300 million to complete this project. The project was tentatively scheduled to start at 4th and Eisenhower, proceed southeast bound, kind of across where the old women's penitentiary was, go across the railroad tracks, then proceed south over the flood ground, the farm ground there, and then eventually turn back to the east and tie into 152 Highway. After they got the report, it kind of sat on the shelf until Mr. John Smolin of Ballard and Spar approached the county about a public-private partnership. And basically they wanted to look at it, they would build the road, and they would put a toll on it to recover their cost. They didn't know if it was feasible to do this or how much money they could put into the project. So they had requested funding from the county commission for $175,000 to do a feasibility study and then also to research the legal work of a toll road that would span both Kansas and Missouri, since Kansas will allow toll, but Missouri does not allow toll. So there has to be something done there. They were to consider that funding in November. When it came onto the agenda, I wrote a letter as chairman of the Port Authority, and Harlan Russell wrote a letter as chairman of Leavenworth County Development Corporation requesting that they table this to give us some time to give a response to it and provide input to it. That we felt that they needed all the public support they could get for it, and that slowing it up a month wasn't going to hurt anything. So when it came back for reconsideration in December of 2020, we requested that, yeah, this sounds like a great project. We don't know if it's feasible, but we really think you need to back up and look at a total transportation regional plan. kind of what KDOT's wanting and Mark's been asking for and a lot of others have been asking for. So the Board of County Commissioners, they approved spending the $175,000 to begin the feasibility study. They also directed staff to begin working with the Leavenworth County Port Authority to conduct a regional transportation plan in conjunction with Mark, KDOT, Lansing, Basehor, Tongi, and City of Leavenworth. And again, the idea of this is something that we could have a priority list that KDOT and Mark would recognize, they would adopt this, and then we could get some federal funding and some state funding for some transportation improvements in the northwest part of the metropolitan area. So once that was done in December, we set up a meeting. The first meeting we had, myself and Bill Knoll with Leavenworth County, set up a meeting with Secretary Lorenz, her deputy secretary, and their chief engineer, and then also representatives from Mark, and said, hey, this is what we're trying to do. You know, what do we need to do to make sure that you guys will recognize it? Do we have your support? You know, give us your thoughts, your comments. And basically Secretary Lorenz says, hey, you know, this is great. We think this is something that should have been done a long time ago. Although she would not specify a dollar amount of support, she said if you can get everybody on board, the 4 major cities in the county on board, then we would definitely consider, you know, assisting and funding on it. So we started. They had, at that time, they'd given us an estimate of somewhere between $450,000 and $650,000 for the study. Until you really get the RFP out and you get a consultant on board and you go through scope, it's kind of hard to know exactly where you're going to be. So we've kind of worked with a budget number of the $450,000. But we developed a draft request for proposals, which I believe was in your packets. That proposal was reviewed by a subcommittee, and that subcommittee was made up of professionals within the City of Leavenworth, City of Lansing, City of Basehor, and City of Tonganoxie and Leavenworth County. And so your representative on that subcommittee was Mr. Spickemeyer. Paul Kramer for City of Leavenworth, Leslie Riviola with Basehor, and George, I can't think of his last name, yeah, with Tonganoxie. I also serve as a non-voting member on it, and a representative from Olson Associates also serves as a non-voting. People say, okay, Olson, why are they involved? Olson is the on-call engineer for Leavenworth County, and they have indicated that they would not submit a proposal on this project since they were involved in the RFP and because of their relationship with the county. So once we got the RFP out, the plan was to go around and to get funding commitments from the cities, from the county. If I can get those all done, then we would approach KDOT and said, hey, we got everybody's commitment, you know, in thought and spirit and plus dollars and cents, and this is what we want from you. And our hope is that KDOT will say, okay, we'll throw our share in, and then we can put it out on the street for consulting engineers. The goal of this RFP, as I said, is to pull all these studies together. We've studied this area, we've studied that area, but we've never done anything that says that this is the best option. And I think that's what people want to know. Are we better to spend $300 million to build Eastern Gateway? And Eastern Gateway, it could come back that the consultant says, you know, this thing is feasible for us to put in $100 million, but we want public support for $200 million. If that comes back that way, then are we better to spend the $200 million on this, or are we better to spend $200 million on a western bypass that takes off from, you know, 167th, 168th, and I-70, maybe goes north, west of Basehor, west of Lansing, west of Leavenworth, to allow growth out that way? Are we better to do K7 with bridges, interchanges? Are we better to improve K5 to Walcott? So I think that's kind of the idea would be to let's narrow down what the best options are. As KDOT says, they want it to be a combined effort. They want everybody to be on the same page. If we can't get everybody on the same page, KDOT's not going to be nearly as interested in providing funding as if we're all saying, hey, this is our number one project. Leavenworth County will be the lead agency, so they will contract with the consulting engineer. There would be a simple agreement between the county and each of the cities for their portion of the funding. I talked to David Van Paris, and he didn't think it would be anything very complicated, a very simple agreement. Estimated to be a 12-month study. My guess is by the time we get everything lined out, talk to KDOT, advertise, pick a consultant, we probably would not have a consultant on board until sometime in August. So results would not be until August of 21, sometime in summer, late summer of next year. This is kind of what the selection criteria that the subcommittee came up with. Project approach, understanding, management, the project team, and their relevant experience. This is kind of what some of the scope would include. Work with the steering committee. It would have a public involvement component where they would hold public meetings. Not exactly sure if we'd go back to the old style of an open public meeting where people show up, or they've done them kind of with the Zoom and all that because of COVID. Hopefully by the time that part came through, we're done with COVID and get back to more of a normal routine. But they would need to collect traffic volume, crash history, the existing infrastructure condition, maintenance activities, forecast traffic patterns, volumes. Again, look at the previous studies, possibly update some of the cost estimates for those studies, and then develop a prioritized model to rank and identify the projects. We would also ask them to take a real quick look at some of the clearances that would be required concerning environmental, historical, property boundaries, floodplains, things like that. Once they get that done, they will present the draft findings to the Port Authority, to each of the cities, and the county with the goal of developing a consensus among everybody. After those meetings, a final report will be issued and will be up for adoption by the elected officials, and hopefully the report will be used for steering guidance for KDOT and for federal funding. This is our proposed budget. KDOT and Leavenworth, $150,000 each. City of Leavenworth, $90,000. Lansing, $30,000. Basehor and Tonganoxie, $15,000 each, for a total budget of $450,000. I have already been to the City of Leavenworth. I have been to Basehor, and I have been to Tonganoxie, and all of those cities' elected officials have unanimously supported the project, including the funding. If I'm successful here tonight with Lansing, and Lansing chooses to support it, I'm scheduled to go to Leavenworth County next Wednesday and present that to Leavenworth County and request the final funding from them. Assuming they fund it, then we will go to KDOT to ask for KDOT's funding. So we're getting close to presenting this to everybody. I don't know if Mr. Gutshaw has anything he'd like to add. Not really. If Mr. Stickemeyer has anything he'd like to add, I would be glad to try to answer any questions that I can.
Back up like 3 slides where you talked about elected officials voting on this. Like what elected officials?
County and city officials. You're talking issue a final report for adoption, endorsement by the elected county and city officials.
Yeah.
So the final report would come before you.
Okay. So all the different entities would be voting on it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Greg, how did you come up with the split on this?
There wasn't a magic formula. It seemed like a reasonable amount based off of size of city, benefit. It wasn't split like the LCDC funding is or anything like that.
Wasn't based on population or anything?
Yeah, somewhat. But I mean, obviously, City of Leavenworth, Lansing's probably going to benefit as much or more than Tonganoxie would.
Right.
Although, Tonganoxie's going to benefit too, but if we do an improvement on K7 or a bypass, we'll probably Lansing and Leavenworth are going to be the two that benefit the most from it.
Is there any particular reason Easton's not on here?
No. I think we picked, what is it, first-class cities, second-class cities?
Major cities, yeah.
Kind of the major cities.
I think Easton's only like 300 or 400 people. Does that sound right?
That sounds
I mean, it's
right.
pretty small.
Council have any other questions? Discussion?
Good.
Hey, Greg, so there's still consideration of the west side from 70 up the west side into Leavenworth versus...
Definitely. I mean, everything's on the table. I'm not saying that will be the one, but they're going to look at everything to what makes the most sense.
I have at least one question. I know when they did the corridor study, we all kind of participated in that. They also came and gave everybody a briefing about how they were going to do the, what is it, J-cuts or, and then never heard another thing about it. I mean, after the brief, we're like, oh yeah, that really sounds good. But then we never got a follow-up of that thing died, and it's not going to happen. So I don't know about this, but I mean, I know we're going to hear the big plan, and here's our major things that we're going to try and move forward with. I mean, at least for my opinion is, whatever happens, we should be back briefed. I mean, whether it's a go and no go on this piece or that piece, but it didn't seem like there was much follow-up on the corridor one, so I would just throw that out there to say I think the governing body would appreciate any kind of follow-up.
And I don't know if Mike has heard any more, but from what I have heard, the J-cuts are still on the list and still scheduled to be
They're
done.
probably on the list with those other studies, the 6 or
Could be.
7 you named, yeah.
Well, I've seen it a little close higher up than that, but and you have to keep in mind this is more of probably a 10 to 15 year plan than a 3 to 5 year plan.
Sure.
So even though they come up with something, obviously it's going to depend on funding. It always depends on money. So as money comes available, then it's somewhere to work on, but it's nothing that's going to get completed in the next 5 years.
Unless at the national level they push what they're pushing, right? I mean, which is infrastructure.
Right.
So, I mean, you may get more money than we think we'll get. We don't know for sure. Okay. Well, I appreciate your presentation. Any other questions before we make a motion? No?
Mayor, I make a motion to approve the funding request of $30,000 to assist with the countywide traffic study.
Second?
I have a motion and a second. Call the roll.
Mr. Dixon?
Oh,
Question, if this motion is approved, where's that 30,000 coming from us? What fund item line?
It'd come from the general fund, but I don't have the specific line item laid out yet, but likely the general fund. And there's
Right.
funds on hand for that.
All right, thank you.
Don's wallet.
That check will bounce.
okay, we had a motion and a second. Call the roll.
Mr. Dixon?
Yes.
Mr. Brungart?
Yes.
Mr. Stednica?
Yes,
Mr. Trinkle?
Yes.
Mr. Kirby?
Yes.
Mr. Major?
Yes.
Mr. Garvey?
Yes.
Motion passed.
Thank you very much for your support.
Thanks
It's
for the briefing,
appreciated.
Greg. Item number 4 is approval of bid for Capital Improvements Program 2021. Bids were solicited for the annual mill and overlay project, and 3 bids were received. The low bid was submitted by Little Joe's Asphalt of Bonner Springs, Kansas. Funds for this project are available through the Fund 70 Street contract. And I think we'll open it for discussion just to see what anybody's got questions.
Still gonna try to hit some of the alleys or side streets and stuff that we haven't got.
Yes, we have, there is an alley programmed in this.
This is still in effect. I mean, we haven't got them all yet, have we?
Oh, no, it is our intention to continue to program alleys, to include this year and then in forthcoming years.
Okay.
We've had, in my opinion, success in that.
this includes the sidewalks, curbs.
Yes,
Right,
yes.
what we plan
This
to do?
includes a replacement of deficient curb within the sections identified this year.
Okay. And we had a question last year and the year before about the quality of concrete used in those curbs. They seem to be deteriorating faster than some others? We looked into that?
Well, we've definitely, we spec the KCMMB, the high granite, better concrete, and we're doing inspections now. It's really curbs that were about 20 years old that we seem to be having some trouble with at this point. That's at some point about 20 years ago, somebody started
Yeah, the
figuring out.
reason I asked that is because we've had curbs put in prior to that 20 years, and they're still there, and they're still solid and still doing on, so obviously it had to be with the grade of concrete or mix or whatever that, okay.
It was a gravel, wasn't it? Didn't they determine it was a gravel?
The amount of granite.
Some of it's a gravel, some of it was a Portland cement mix. They figured out a way to make it a little bit cheaper.
Yeah, that's,
It's gonna have granite though.
Yes, this is all our standard sidewalk mix that we adopted to try to circumvent that happening in the future.
super.
Marcus?
So, Mike, this also includes improving and repairing some of the sidewalks that are not needing full repairs, but
Well, the majority of this work is curb work and asphalt work, yes. So we are going to talk a little bit about sidewalks in the next item, but for the mill and overlay CIP, this is replacing anything that we've identified as deficient curb so that we get that replaced before we overlay it because, we're trying to get a 15-year lifespan out of an overlay. So we really try to make sure that we get it fixed today so that we don't have to mess with it hopefully for 15 more years.
Anyone else on this one? No? Okay, I need a motion to approve the bid and all alternate bids from Little Joe's Asphalt in an amount not to exceed $512,446.85 for the 2021 capital improvement program.
So moved.
Second?
I have a motion and a second. Call the roll.
Mr. Dixon?
Yes.
Mr. Brungart?
Yes.
Mr. Stednica?
Yes.
Mr. Trinkle?
Yes.
Mr. Kirby?
Yes.
Mr. Major?
yes.
Mr. Garvey?
Yes.
Okay, motion passed. Item number 5 is sidewalk cost share policy. At the April 29th work session, this policy was discussed and would allow for a cost share policy for sidewalk replacement at a 50% reimbursement rate with a maximum of $5 a square foot. Based on the guidance and discussion at the work session, the policy is ready for adoption. Any discussion on this? Mike,
We brought this up at a work session last September, and we're starting to get some feedback from some citizens wanting to do some sidewalk repairs in front of their house. So basically, by city ordinance and code, you are responsible for the maintenance of the sidewalk. But we also understand it's a pretty significant undertaking for a lot of folks. So we are proposing a 50% cost share so that if our code enforcement was to determine we have a problem or if a citizen brings forward a problem that the sidewalk is deteriorating in such a manner that we'll go out and confirm that with staff, and then we would like to offer them a cost share to do that. There are a lot of municipalities that are doing that now, specifically KCK and Leavenworth here locally, as well as some others throughout the state of Kansas. It's a fairly common way to do it, and we just want to kind of be proactive and understand the burden of some of that responsibility to our citizens. And we have funds available for sidewalk repair that we could utilize for that, and we would also create a specific line item for this going forward so we can monitor to see what kind of demand we get from citizens.
all right, thanks, Mike. Okay, I need a motion to adopt the sidewalk cost share program as presented.
So move.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Call the roll.
Mr. Dixon?
Yes.
Mr. Brungart?
Yes.
Mr. Stednica?
Yes.
Mr. Trinkle?
Yes.
Mr. Kirby?
Yes.
Mr. Major?
Yes.
Mr. Garvey?
Yes.
Motion passed. Item number 6 is the Park Master Plan Phase 1 Design Work Contract. Burrio was the firm chosen by the selection committee for the design work for the Parks Master Plan Phase 1. Phase 1 of the plan includes a 5-field baseball softball complex with parking and a concession restroom storage structure at Bernard Park, along with the designation splash park, shelter, and reuse of the existing parking lot and restroom facility at City Park. Now open it for discussion. Yes, please.
All right, second try. Let's see if we can get it right this time. My name is Jeanette Labby Holdeman. I live on 820 4H Road. right opposite the Ryan Farm, which is now going to auction, which is kind of interesting. I would like to speak to you on this issue of item number 6 because it's near and dear to my heart, as many of you know. I am still concerned that we are focused on softball, baseball fields, and soccer fields, whereas after the results of the survey, they came in at 7 and number 11 on the desires of the community here in the city of Lansing. The items that came in first were a swimming pool and trails and walking and bike trails. So I am here today to ask you to consider focusing, especially in light of COVID, to focus on those issues as well, not just on fields, baseball, soccer fields out in a location where we really and truly have no running water, we don't have any electricity, and we've just barely got, well, we have water there, but we have no sewer or anything like that. And one of the reasons I have an actual solution to what I am asking you to consider today, there is a 19-acre lot right next door to Angel Falls, which I personally love, that is for sale for $175,000. This 19-acre lot has about 12 acres of buildable property, which would be ideal for a swimming pool, lots of parking, maybe a couple of park benches, a picnic table. And we could expand Angel Falls through that area and on the other side, on this side, the south side of the creek, so that the trail system would be quite significant. So please consider that when you're thinking about the $5 million we're going to be spending on this particular item now for softball and baseball and soccer fields, because I do believe COVID has really woke us up to the fact that we need to get out and walk, and we see people all the time walking and jogging here. And I really do believe that item number 2, which was the trail system, is really a priority over some of the other issues that we have where we don't even have utilities. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Council, any discussion?
One of the people on the consultants team has experience with aquatics and things like that, so we can get more firm numbers from him potentially about pools and things like that. I kind of come back to we can't build a pool for $1 or $2 million. We just can't. But we could talk to the consultant about options and ideas and report that back to the city council, if that's reasonable to you all.
I think we were going down that path anyhow, weren't we?
We did add pool to phase 2 of the master plan, yeah. We did do that.
Part of it is, and part of the plan, of course, is to move some things out there that are in center here. So, I mean, in the overall master plan, there's got to be some movement from some pieces of the parks to other pieces of the parks, which is what's this phase. I mean, Jason, you could probably talk to that, but that's part of the reason we're doing that. As far as trail systems, I mean, can you talk to that, Jason, in the master plan?
Well, included in the master plan, there was a revised citywide master plan, which obviously, you know, a lot of the things that we've acquired in the master plan have been through development. Right. And I think as things to continue to develop, obviously that's our biggest chance to add sections on to, or links onto that. I mean, as far as within the parks go, you know, we continue to try and improve and maintain the natural trails that we have out of Bernard Park that we'll use until, you know, those areas are developed. That's another future piece with the city park. I don't know if you guys can remember the whole community park concept that went on with City Park, but it did have walking trail as a portion of that, same within Willow Park as well. So as far as something that we have on the table right now that we know is going to develop as a trail soon, we don't have anything right now that I'm aware of. I don't know if anything comes along with any street improvements that we're doing.
No, I mean, yeah.
That's true.
I mean, DeSoto was a large addition. But
right.
One of the things, development is slowed. So as part of COVID too, right? So the development of housing and new neighborhoods, things that we could use to help us connect trails, has really slowed to a halt. We could definitely take a look at how we improve the trails in the parks that we're improving. And we can look at the option of the property that's for sale too. I mean, I haven't even considered that. We can definitely have a work session or something to talk.
Otherwise, I can have a bake sale or something so we can raise the money for it.
Okay. I'll
I
buy
didn't
some
know, I didn't
cookies.
know that land was for sale.
Finding the property.
Yeah.
Talking about the Ryan property?
No,
think
not
it's-
Ryan property. She's
no.
talking
It's owned
about
by the
right
Methodist
next to,
Church.
She's talking about right next to the Catholic Church.
Right.
Right, from Mary Street back to the Catholic Church.
That nice flat area that you see deer out there all the time.
Yeah, I know, Mr. Riley the Riley group has been talking to the Archbishop and to the Church Finance Council about that down there. They want to buy that 55 acres from West Mary down to the church. And that's being looked at right now by the church and the Finance Council.
Yeah, it's a different location.
Yeah, I think the one she's referring to is owned by the Methodist Church.
Right.
Oh, the one that's further down
Just
in
Yeah.
the
adjacent.
in the
Yeah.
floodplain?
Yep.
Yeah.
But the Methodist Church couldn't build there because there's something with environmental, with some type of an animal or a reptile. And that's why they moved out here to Wiley's old meat market. Isn't that something that caused them from not building there, and they've had the property up for sale since?
That might predate my time. I'm not familiar with why they built it.
Could we check that and see? Because, I mean, it's for sale, but I mean, they couldn't build a church there because, part of it was floodplain and all that.
Yeah.
But it had something to do with some indigenous reptile or something there, environmental got involved, and they couldn't
Okay.
I remember
displace
that.
that habitat or something, so, I don't know.
Jason, I have a question. Yeah, and I guess you need to refresh my memory because, I'm a proponent, was a proponent of the pool. I really thought it'd be great for the community. However, am I missing something? We had a presentation, gentleman came up and talked to us and said that there are a lot of communities that pools just aren't used and they become a money pit and, can't find kids to work in the summer, whatnot. You guys remember that?
Yeah.
Well, that got me to thinking. I mean, I don't want to build something if it truly isn't going to be used, and if it's going to be, a pool's going to cost, if we would put a pool in, it's going to cost money, and it's not going to be a money maker. But you don't want to see it be, a money pit either. Right. And, I envision a pool like it was in the 70s. Kids go there and all afternoon, but then we're told during one of these meetings and one of the presentations that this doesn't, they're outdated, is almost how I took it. Right. They're a thing of the past. So.
That was pre-COVID, though. I think things have changed. I think a pool would be something people would be more interested in because it's an open-air atmosphere. You can social distance at a pool.
Well, look at all the pools that were closed last year.
But they're all opening this year.
Well, but you're talking about COVID, and when COVID was here, the pools were closed.
Right. But all those same pools are opening.
The guy was presenting to us before COVID, right? Right. So how has COVID, I'm lost, I think, on how that has, Jesse, and I'm just not understanding how COVID has changed that.
Because it's changed. COVID has changed the mentality of our interactions with each other. People are looking to get outside more than they used to. It used to be kids would spend more time inside playing video games. Now I think they're spending more time outside. Just like Jeanette said, there are a lot of people walking around the city right now. People are outside nonstop these days. When I get up to drive to church Sunday morning, man, people are all over Ida and up Soto, walking on the new sidewalk. So I just think people.
I hope that's here to stay.
Right.
But I'm not convinced it is. But I hope it is.
I think the thing to keep in mind is how, like it was stated earlier, I think those comments were taken into consideration about pool and put into the master plan. I think that when we talked when this was presented and we talked through those things, those concerns were brought up, those things that you're talking about. And I think they're still relevant because I've read several articles lately about pools that are not going to be able to open this year for lack of staffing, things of that nature. Would we have that issue here? I don't know. But I know we can't seem to hire any other seasonal positions here with very much success. So that's irrelevant, I guess, what I'm trying to say. I think this was an intermediate step for us that we could afford that gives us some type of an aquatic recreation
Correct.
facility.
That's how I took it, yes.
Well, I mean,
And
it's a phased plan.
that's-
I mean, the
that's
bottom
correct,
line
that's
is, in phase 2, I believe, is when we are going to get deep in discussion on a pool.
That's correct.
Or splash pads or something of that nature.
No. That's,
Splash pads are in there.
Splash pad
Phase
is in this
one.
phase.
that's in phase 1.
Mr. Mayor, I actually have stats from Leavenworth and Tonganoxie on their pools. Because they all charge fees with the exception of.
Can you go microphone, please?
The stats that I have from Leavenworth and Tonganoxie showed basically that the revenues, they didn't meet, plus the salaries, it did not meet the exact budget, but on average for the city of Leavenworth, and this can be 2018 numbers because obviously we didn't have anything since, they actually had to support it with $40,000 because it, with the admissions and the pool revenue, which is obviously
That's very
snacks, and minus the salaries and the benefit package, they ended up paying about $40,000, and the city of Tonganoxie was around $24,000 out of pocket.
Their pools are paid for.
Yes, yeah, but out of pocket, running the pool
Right.
on a yearly basis from Memorial Day through
Labor Day.
September, yeah, okay. And I do have those numbers.
Yeah, I think regardless, we're going to have to go through phases, right? And if in phase 2 we decide that we will go for a pool and that's the governing body's decision, well, then we'll move forward with it. We'll also, I mean, that's a bonding thing for a long time because that's gonna be a large cost, like most major efforts. So, I mean,
This isn't shutting the door on pool.
no, that's what I'm trying to say, is we're not shutting the door on it.
I do understand, but to me, the disappointment is that you send out a survey and ask people what they want. And then you choose things that are way on the lower end of the list.
Well,
They aren't-
I mean, the way I read the survey was an aquatic feature, and include pools, splash pads, and something else. And in this
Yes,
design, we do
outdoor
have a
pools
splash
and
side.
aquatics is what it said. And 73% of the people wanted that, and 70% of the people wanted walking and biking trails. So, I mean, it's just a little bit unfair for not to consider what the people actually voted on.
No, yeah.
Well,
and-
one thing though, in the comments section, we also had several people say they didn't want to raise property taxes, and we also had multiple people griping at the city about the pool at the high school because they thought it was the city's pool. So, I mean, I feel like we also had a lot of citizens that thought the city oversaw the high school pool when we don't. So I felt like there was some misinformation there with
Well, I
some
mean, there-
people who did the survey.
There's also another option, right, which is to bring it to a special election,
Yeah.
right? I mean, we have an election, and if the people want to speak and say they want a pool, and they're saying, I will pay for the pool, well, then we'll build a pool.
We have a budget. We have a budget to adhere by, and I wish we could renovate every park in town. That would be awesome. Just to
No,
dump
but
money.
it would be similar to a bond. It's a vote for a bond.
Right, yeah.
So, I mean,
That'd be awesome.
it'd be similar to what they did for the school, only it'd be for a pool. So, I mean, that's something we can discuss.
I thought, Mayor, it was my understanding that if we did want a pool and we want to go that direction, we would have to bond it.
We would, but this would
Right.
put it up to, to vote by
Correct.
the citizens.
Right.
And if they want to vote for that, because it's their, we are on the council and in the governing body to look out for the taxpayer as well. So if they're up for it, I mean, we gladly do it. Jason, did you have anything else on this, on phase one?
No, the only thing else I would add is, and I'm not sure where we're going with it now, but I just want to point out that this only does take us through the design documents
Right.
in this portion of it. So if we do decide to bond phase one, and there's some additional money that would go into the design, or actually the bidding and the construction administration portion of it, which would be
Right.
back at another time.
Yeah, this
So,
is just for the design of phase one.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Jason, you did a nice job on that organization of all that. And
Thank you.
I was part of that committee, and I thought they worked really well together.
I
We
appreciate it.
really respected each other's ideas and whatnot, so.
Thank you.
So Jason, I got a question. So as we go through this and we're voting on the design piece of it, we're still looking at the fact that we only have one entrance and one exit out of that, with multiple baseball fields, softball fields, walking trails, with one entrance and one exit. And we're okay with that,
Well, that's in
to a two-lane road.
that's in the whole concept of that park, is to have an additional exit and entrance into that, but it won't be included in this phase one part of it, no. I think that price tag probably goes up significantly.
That's gonna be a problem, isn't it? I mean, we're
Well,
talking about building all this and having all this, and entrance coming in and going out. I mean, it's real exciting for fireworks. I can't imagine what it's going to be like for practices and games and all that kind of
Well,
stuff.
it's going to be more spread out than it is.
I don't think it'll
fireworks
be
roll.
near as
No,
bad.
No.
It's going to be just like it is at Wilman Park every Saturday right outside my neighborhood. No parking, traffic jam, cluster everywhere.
But we do have parking spaces built into this design.
Yeah, I don't
We
see
do.
that.
I mean, there's plenty of parking.
Oh.
It's getting in and out, like you're saying.
Yeah, that's what I'm
And,
saying. It's
yeah.
getting in and out. So
It's a
in
challenge.
between games, it's going to be real interesting getting in and out if we don't. I mean, I love everything about it, but that's always been my biggest gripe is, can we not improve the entrance and exit? Because I grew up and I raised kids through this.
Right.
And it takes two entrances and exits to get through weekend games because they're back to back and they're not offset.
Right.
Especially with this many fields and soccer. I mean, baseball, soccer, and softball going on simultaneously. We're not talking about, all the games in at the same time, right?
No.
Anyway, right, that-
Generally, the games of soccer and baseball and softball would not overlap. Practices would. You're correct on that. I guess I look to the fact of where we're playing currently, and it's not the easiest place to get in and out of
Right.
either. And the parking is very limited. You know that. And
So that's kind of
So
why I
to-
was
so
thinking
to me,
that
this
we're
is-
talking about spending a lot of
so-
money.
So to me, this is an
You'd think we'd
improvement.
probably improve that.
Right. But I guess you can see how far that $5 million may go.
Yeah.
And with the cost of, I don't know what I don't know about what the increased cost of construction is going to be because of
Well, at one time
lumber,
we
building
looked at
materials, all
the
these
backside, right? There's an exit that kind of goes out to what, the west?
onto Gilman.
Yeah.
Onto Gilman, yeah. That's what we looked at was going out the other way, and then if you can remember, we had a segment of the trail that we were going to improve further to give a secondary exit out of for fireworks and special events like that.
Right.
And that
as well.
could be bonded too with the pool, right? I mean, that,
I believe all of that's part of phase two.
right.
Right. It
Was
is.
there ever did we ever talk about price for that, to open that up, Jason?
I don't know a specific on
I
what
didn't know we
just
ever, I knew we
building
talked
over.
about it a number of times. Did we ever see,
It would be in the design of phase two. And they'll give us a cost estimate on what that's going to take.
I know ever since we've been discussing about the fireworks, it's always been an issue about getting cars in and out. And I wonder if there's ever looked into to see what putting a tube in or something,
Well,
I mean,
not to derail us any further, but that once this is built, we're going to have some discussions about how we do fireworks. We may have to shoot it from one side of the stadium, of the baseball and softball. It's going to be in that area. That's where this ball fields go. So
Right.
So,
Any other discussion?
Mr. Mayor, what's the plan for the current baseball and softball fields? Assuming this plan goes through, what's the plan for the current field?
Current ones, well, that's the field, that's the design of the aquatic park, another structure, and some other things at City Park.
yeah. So,
Yeah, we
so yeah,
probably-
the idea.
We need to get Ron the overall master plan too,
Yeah.
so we'll get you that.
All right.
I don't know if you want me to go into more specific than that, but the main idea is to get soccer from Willow, baseball from City Park, and open those up to be more neighborhood park type uses. And there's several different kind of features in there, but as far as this phase goes, at City Park, that's where the splash pad would go and a new shelter adjacent to it.
All right.
Okay, any more questions for Jason? Nope. Okay, I need a motion to approve the contract with Vero for the amount not to exceed $466,076.75 for the park's master plan Phase 1 design work.
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Call a roll.
Mr. Dixon?
Yes.
Mr. Brungart?
Yes.
Mr. Stednica?
Yes.
Mr. Trinkle?
Yes.
Mr. Kirby?
Yes.
Mr. Major?
Yes.
Mr. Garvey?
Yes.
Motion passed. Item 7 is structure removal cost application, 1101 North 2nd Street. The application for cost share removal has been submitted. The low bid for the structure removal came in at $7,000, making the city's portion $3,500 if approved. Any discussion on this topic?
Didn't we do this property once before?
We
Did
did in
apply once before?
2019.
When?
We did in 2019, but then it wasn't acted upon.
Was that because of him or because of us that it didn't get acted on?
I
Was it
believe
him?
the property owner had some issues in Florida, and she went back to Florida, and she is here tonight.
I'm just curious. You know why? Okay.
Ruby.
My name is Ruby Eisenring, and I'm speaking about 1101 North 2nd. With COVID, illnesses, it was all put on hold. But because of the water seeping the foundation off of the road that hasn't been looked at through the city, the house has to come down. And I'm here to see that that's done now.
Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, I need a motion to approve the structure removal cost share application and the bid for 1101 North 2nd Street.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Call the roll.
Mr. Dixon?
Yes.
Mr. Brungart?
Yes.
Mr. Stednica?
Yes.
Mr. Trinkle?
Yes.
Mr. Kirby?
Yes.
Mr. Major?
Yes.
Mr. Garvey?
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion approved. Item number 8, ordinance number 1061, future land use map. The Planning Commission has reviewed the future land use map for possible changes. The proposed changes include the property formerly known as Lost 80 Park to be changed to single-family residential, and the other is to change both the north and south sides of West Mary from high-density to single-family residential. The Planning Commission held a public hearing for the modifications, and no comments were made. The Commission has also voted to approve the modifications by a vote of 6-0. So I'll open up discussions on this topic.
Sense.
It's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah.
I've got one comment, which is I'd like you to ask the Planning Commission to at least identify where the multifamily housing would be done in the future. Since this is being taken off the table on that corridor, where do they foresee that going? And I know that might have not been in the original land use map, but we do need to consider where we would put more multifamily.
So I brought that up during the meeting and asked that question of them after they made the motion to approve this as it was stated. And the viewpoint that I got from the vice chair was that they would rather see, or they believe multifamily would make more sense on the southern end along K7 somewhere, just because that's, they feel like that's where it would be best suited.
So are they going to identify some areas out there in the future? Okay.
We can. I was going to ask, hopefully with Tim's blessing, if we want to do some sort of joint work session between the council and planning commission, so that we can look at those areas and kind of try to get a consensus between both bodies on what makes sense, so that we can make one more modification to this and hopefully have it laid out well for where everybody would like
Yeah,
to
that
see
makes
it.
sense.
I think
makes
that would
sense, yeah.
definitely be a good idea.
I'll work with Tim on that then in the planning commission, and we'll get something set up to get that done.
Okay. Any further discussion? No. Okay, I need a motion to accept the modifications to the future land use map and adopt ordinance number 1061.
I'll move.
Have a motion and a second. Call the roll.
Mr. Dixon?
Yes.
Mr. Brungart?
Yes.
Mr. Stednica?
Yes.
Mr. Tinkle?
Yes.
Mr. Kirby?
Yes.
Mr. Major?
Yes.
Mr. Kirby?
Yes.
Motion passed. Report, city attorney.
Well, Mayor, I guess we had an action dismissed, but I think you're all aware of that.
Right.
What? That's good.
You're mumbling.
I didn't hear a thing you said.
We had a action that had been pending against the city. It was dismissed, so that is good news and it's off the table.
Okay.
The lawsuit referring to drainage
Yeah.
was dismissed.
Got it.
Tim?
We received our health insurance renewal from Aetna about a week or week and a half ago. That amounted to a 6% increase. Beth thought that would be around $20,000. In the past, if the increase had been reasonable, I think you guys had just kind of given us a thumbs up for a consensus. So are you guys comfortable with roughly a 6% increase for our renewal for Aetna? Does that sound reasonable to you all, or do you want us to have an agenda item for that, or what? What are your guys'
How's the
thoughts?
service? Any complaints about the service and the?
It's been, yeah, it's been better. We were with a different provider my first couple of years here, and we had a lot of complaints. And since we've been with Aetna, we haven't had quite as many complaints. So,
I say just move forward with it. Go
Okay.
for it.
I would agree.
okay,
Employees are happy with it, yeah.
okay, good deal. Thank you. Also, one other thing. This isn't related to anything specific that's going to be happening in town center right away, but there are a lot of old clay pipes that were installed back in the 50s and 60s, kind of near town center in the West K, West Kansas, West Lois Street areas. They're the old clay tile, and some of the sewer mains are within 3 feet of existing homes. So one of the things that we had talked about is to try to design a sewer for maximum capacity for town center. So if someone comes into town center in a year and a half and uses a lot of water, they wouldn't have to wait on an improved sewer line. So we'd been talking to a consultant about design for an improved sewer line. It'd be similar in scope to the one that we just finished up in your neighborhood, Mr. Trinkle. So it wouldn't be the type of sewer project that would necessitate debt. It's something we'd be able to handle in-house, so it wouldn't be nearly the scope of some of those projects that we'd had a few years ago. It'd be a little bit smaller. But Mr. Zell, Mr. Schmitz, and I had talked about that a little bit, so Tony might bring that to you all, I believe either at the next council meeting or the following one. So that would be designed for sewer improvements in the town center area. So.
Are the ones you're talking about that need to be improved, are they still active?
I believe so, yeah. And one of the things Tony had mentioned to me, he said he really wasn't sure it would have made sense to redo those in 2002, is what he had said, but he wasn't.
That's when we designed town center and put the road and everything in, yeah.
Yeah, he said it would have been best to do that in 2002, but he wasn't really sure why it wasn't done at that time. But he.
A lot of things happened back then.
Well, anyway, again, this isn't relating to anything specific that we anticipate happening in the next year. It's more so we're prepared if something happens in a few years. So.
Again, that makes sense.
Okay.
You're ready for it.
All right. That's all I have.
Department heads, any department heads? No. Okay. Ron, you're up first tonight.
Nothing for me, sir.
Okay. Carrie?
I have nothing, Mayor.
On?
Nothing for me, Mayor.
I passed my time on to my cohort.
Dean?
Give mine to Marcus.
Everybody's going quick.
Marcus.
Hey, I just want to thank the 3 volunteers. Congratulations on your library board. That's pretty good, and I appreciate those volunteers volunteering. And thank Greg for coming out tonight and giving us that presentation on the countrywide transportation plan. I'm pretty excited about that. I'm not real excited about it going west, but I'm kind of excited about looking at all plans. I got it, looking at all plans. Great job, Jason, on the park plan. I got it. I understand. I know my pet peeve with traffic, but I know we're going to build traffic and increase entrance and exits as the plan comes together and we start building parks. So all about it. That's all I got tonight. Thanks.
Thanks, Marcus. Jesse?
I would like to have a work session to discuss dog kennels and placement on properties. You know, there's a dog kennel was built out in Rock Creek. And I got a phone call about it today. Been a couple of phone calls, and it's right on the property line. And I know it's going to be enclosed by a privacy fence, but I just have some concerns about it. And I just would like to have a work session to discuss that.
Actually, like
Do you want to address that, Matt, or?
I know the code. There's no code or regulations on it, and that's my concern about it, because you can basically do whatever you want then.
Yeah, there's currently no regulation that would prevent somebody from putting a dog kennel near a fence. I would say that it's not right on the property line because we don't allow concrete to be built right on the line.
Right.
But it's within a foot or two of the property line. Right. There will be a fence put up around this particular kennel, like we talked about earlier today, but yeah, I mean, if it's something that we want to review, whether we want to modify those regulations or not, or potentially add a regulation or change where those are allowed, I'm open to that.
Is this particular one for private use, or is he doing commercial stuff?
It's private.
Okay.
It's a Leavenworth police officer who has a service dog.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the reason I bring this up is because I had the same issue in my subdivision where someone put a kennel on the property line, and the dogs were bird dogs that were kenneled up all day long. The person who lived next door worked nights at the airport. So all day long the dogs were barking, and the person was trying to sleep. Well, in the situation in my neighborhood, there was a roof over the kennel, which made it a structure. Right. So they had to move the kennel because it was considered a structure. If it didn't, all the guy had to do was take the roof off, and he could have left it there. But he chose to move it. But I just have concerns about how close dog kennels are placed, even if it's for private use, to their neighbors adjoining property for a number of reasons. Not just the dogs barking, but the smell, you know, whether we should notify neighbors that this is being built to get their concerns as well. You know,
We should probably have a work session and look at that.
Sure.
Just you know, whenever. You know,
Yeah.
Yeah, we can add
We
it.
can add that to a work session agenda.
Pepper, I got one more thing for you. 4th of July fireworks, what are we looking like?
We're working on it.
Okay.
We've got one musician signed for the event. We're not ready to release who that is yet, but it's a bigger draw musician than what we normally have.
Do you think we're going to have it though? I mean,
yeah.
like at the park, Kimberner Park.
I'm moving forward full steam ahead. We're having it at the
That's
park.
what I wanted to hear. That's good news. I like that answer. Yeah.
I mean, to be perfectly honest, the only way we would do anything different is if it happens to rain and we can't get in the field.
Right. Okay. All right. Well, our president implied that if enough people don't get vaccinated, he's not going to let us enjoy the 4th of July. I just wanted to make sure we're going to enjoy our freedom in Lansing with our fireworks display. So
I have not been directed or instructed to do anything other than move forward.
Okay. Perfect. Thanks, Matt.
Sure.
Yeah, that's not all you have, Jesse.
I would like to thank the police for everything they do in the city of Lansing. Really, they do a great job. I seen an officer chasing down a person running the other day, and it was awesome. You know, just watching the officer do his job. You know, these guys get out there and they work hard, and they're criticized day and night for the jobs that they do. And I just would like to say thank you to those guys. So that's all I've got, and I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
A motion and a second to adjourn. Call a roll.
Mr. Dixon?
Yes.
Mr. Brungart?
Yes.
Mr. Stednica?
Yes.
Mr. Trinkle?
Yeah.
Mr. Kirby?
Please.
Mr. Major?
Yes.
Mr. Garvey?
Yes.
We are adjourned.